What's up, YouTube family? Lou here with another God Like Collectibles video. Decided to make another video. A lot of people loved, commenting about the 80's team that I put together and as my favorite 80's team. And there were some people who had some good guys that they talked about, Dale Murphy, Dave Steve, even guys like Pedro Guerrero and stuff like that. But I decided to do a 90's team and wanted to share that with you. So from the 1990's, this is the team I selected. These were my favorite players. So I want to show you who I decided to put in. And I'm going to do it in order of a lineup as well, because someone had mentioned in the last video that I should have put like a batting lineup, how would I did it, and I didn't. So in this video, as I'm showing them in order of the batting order. So for my 90's, batting first and at second base would be Robbie Alomar. I think he was the best second baseman of that era. A lot of people would argue that you could say Craig Biggio was also a great second baseman, especially hitting. He was a good hitting second baseman. But I think Robbie Alomar was a better glove at second. And he was no slouch at hitting either. 300 hitter, over 200 home runs in his career. The guy could steal bases. This guys could hit. I love this card too, by the way. As I'm like shining it, it's awesome. And not to mention, he won 2 World Series with the Blue Jays in the 90's. So Robbie Alomar leading me off. Batting second, I know people are going to bug out because this kind of early, but at center field, Ken Griffey Jr., he'll be my second hitter. Reason why? Because he's fast. He can hit for average. He can hit for power. He's a lefty. I like Alomar leading off because Alomar is a switch hitter. But Griffey was just a man. In the 90's, you could argue he was the best player in the 90's. Not to mention the best center fielder in the 90's. The guy had a great glove. 10-time Gold Glove winner. And the dude could hit for power, for average. He was fast. He was just a great 5'2" player. So definitely probably the greatest player of my generation. In that span. And I love this card, the Naturals, Pinnacle 96, I believe this is. But it's just an awesome card. So he would be batting second. Batting third at first base, I decided to go with Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt. Another Naturals, Pinnacle 1996. He just had raw power, man. He was just a naturally big dude and could hit for power. He was the man. So I like him. I know a lot of people would probably pick maybe Bagwell or maybe McGuire too, because at that time McGuire was going through his whole thing with Sammy Sosa and in the late 90's. And McGuire was a big power hitter. But I like the Big Hurt. I think I would put him over McGuire at first. So he would be my third hitter. My fourth hitter, left field, Barry Bonds. To me, Barry Bonds, I know a lot of people frown on the whole steroid thing, but the dude was a natural, man. He was a natural player, man. He was awesome. Defensively, hitting, power. Even before all the accusations, my man was still hitting 30 homers a year, still stealing 30 bases a year. He was batting 300. The guy was a man. So he would be my left fielder, hands down, without a doubt. I think Barry Bonds. You can make an honorable mention for Albert Bell, who had a great career. For him only playing, I think it was like 12 seasons and almost hitting 400 home runs. I think he batted like 380 or something like that, 380 homers. Albert Bell is definitely up there as a slugger. But overall, as a player, I would take Bonds. So Bonds is my left fielder. He would be batting fourth. Batting fifth. Now, I might get some controversy on it. But like I said, this lineup is of my favorite players of the 90s. All right, so he is not a Hall of Famer. Juan Gonzalez. And the reason I went with Juan Gonzalez, he was an RBI machine. The guy won 2 MVPs in the 90s. You know, some people may say, oh, you should put Larry Walker, you know, and maybe even Manny Ramirez, right? But, you know, I think I would take Gonzalez as my guy at right field for the 90s. You know what I mean? He was a monster hitter for the Rangers. Like I said, 2-time MVP. And I know there's a lot of controversy around him too, about juicing or whatever. But you know what? The dude was a beast. That was my guy. So I'm a big fan of Gonzalez. So he's in my team. So he's batting fifth. Batting sixth. Now I had to put him at DH. Because I decided to go with somebody else at his position. And at DH, put Mike Piazza. You know what I mean? He was a great hitting catcher. Hit, you know, 30-plus homers a year. The guy was driving 100 runs. He could hit for power, for average. He was a good hitter. So I decided to put him at my DH only because I couldn't decide whether or not not that I couldn't decide, because the guy I chose at catcher, he's my catcher. But I decided to go with him because he was a power catcher. Most home runs by any catcher. So he's going to be batting sixth behind Gonzalez. At number 7, at third base. This one was a tough choice, but I decided to go with him. You know, he's a Hall of Famer. But I decided to go with Chipper Jones. And I know he didn't really start, like, doing his thing until mid-90s. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, mid-90s, around the time when Atlanta won a World Series. And but he was a natural at third base. You know, I was thinking Matt Williams. In the 90s, Matt Williams was a beast. He hit over 300 home runs in the 90s alone. He was a powerhouse, Matt Williams, and he was a good third baseman. So I was deciding between Chipper Jones and Matt Williams. I decided to go with Chipper. But you couldn't go wrong with either one for the 90s. So Chipper Jones will be batting 7th, and he'll be at third base. Batting 8th at shortstop. And this one probably would get me a lot of controversy too. But there's several reasons why I chose this individual. Not only was he a good shortstop, he could hit for average. And the fact that he could hit for average and play the position, I think he was a good ball player, great ball player. He is in the Hall of Fame. Barry Larkin. Now, a lot of people are probably saying, oh, what about A-Rod? Or what about Derek Jeter? Or who else in the 90s? Maybe Omar Vizquel, which I think Omar Vizquel was an absolute beast at shortstop. And he's probably one of my favorite shortstops of all time. But because I think he was a better hitter, Larkin, he could steal bases, he could hit. I decided to go with Barry Larkin. In the 90s, he was a problem. You know what I mean? Cal Ripken was still the man in the 90s, but I already had put him in my 80s team. So I decided to give somebody else some love, and I decided to go with my man Barry Larkin. So he would be batting 8th. And batting 9th, to me, my personal, I'm not saying he's the greatest, but he's my personal greatest, catcher of all time, to me. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I'm right, but he's my favorite catcher of all time. I got to see him play growing up. And to me, I think he's defensively probably the greatest catcher of all time. And in the 90s, he was just the man. And I go with Pudge Rodriguez, Ivan Rodriguez. And I decided to go with this Fleer gold medallion. I think Pudge, the fact that he could hit for average, he could hit for some power. And defensively, he just had an awesome arm. I think he was probably top 3 catchers of all time. People could argue that, and I get it. You know what I mean? You got Johnny Bench, you got Yogi Berra, you got Campanella. There's a lot of great catchers over the years, and I get it. But unfortunately, I didn't really get to see them play. You know, I got to see this man play. And as far as the greatest catcher I've ever seen play on a yearly basis, this was my guy. So I put him batting 9th, which is crazy, him batting 9th, when he used to bat, I think, like either 3rd or 5th or something like that with Texas. But Pudge Rodriguez, man, he was my guy. And then for my pitchers, for the 80s, I did 2 starting pitchers. I put Roger Clemens and I put Doc Gooden. This time I decided to do a lefty and a righty starting pitcher. I struggled a little bit with my righty, only because there was a couple of guys, man, that I thought that I could have put there. I wasn't going to put Clemens again, even though he could be on there, because I chose him for the 80s and I wanted to do something different. So I decided to go with Greg Maddux as my righty. I thought about Pedro Martinez, but Pedro started really taking off in the end of the 90s, going into the 2000s. So that's why I decided to go with Greg Maddux. I think Greg Maddux, and you can even say Tom Glavine, were awesome pitchers in the 90s. But I decided to go with Maddux. Maddux is considered one of the greatest pitchers of all time. He had a great record. And for a guy who wasn't really overpowering, goes to show you how great of a pitcher he really was. So I decided to go to Maddux as my righty. And as my lefty, there's no question, he's one of my favorite pitchers of all time. The big unit, Randy Johnson. I decided to pick him as my 90s lefty starting pitcher. I think he was just dominant, you know, killing birds and everything. But the dude was an absolute monster on the mound. You know, nasty stuff, intimidating, just the kind of guy that you want to be able to have in your team as somebody in your rotation, as one of your aces anyway. So some honorable mentions, like I said, for second base, Craig Biggio, center fielder in the 90s. You know, you could say Kirby Puckett, but I chose Kirby for my 80s team, even though I know he played into the 90s. But I would go with Bernie Williams as a personal favorite. Bernie Williams really picked up steam in the second half of the 90s, especially with the Yankees winning some championships. First base, like I said, you could go with either McGuire or Bagwell. Jeff Bagwell was huge in the 90s. Left field, like I said, Albert Bell. He was a monster at left field as a hitter anyway. At right field, man, I thought Manny Ramirez, and then Larry Walker. But Manny, I really like Manny as a hitter. At DH, like I said, you could just flop anybody around. Put McGuire there, Bagwell there, Joey Bell. Third base, I already mentioned Matt Williams. At shortstop, Cal Ripken, like I said, I already chose him for the 80s. He could have been chosen also as the 90s because he was probably a top 3 shortstop in the 90s as well. But I would probably go with either Derek Jeter or A-Rod in the 90s. If you're looking for power, then you go with A-Rod. A-Rod was also a better glove at short. But there's just something about Jeter, man. He had that component about him, that winning component, that leadership component. And he just made the right plays at the right time at short. even though people don't see him as a great defender, but he was a good defender, and he got 4 gold gloves. You know what I mean? So the dude was nasty. And then at catcher it would be Piazza. Even though I think he sucks as a catcher, like defensively, he got no arm. But if you're gonna go between what you was able to choose in the 90s, you know, I think who you had, like Chris Hoyles and Darren Dalton, I would go with Piazza. You know what I mean? But Pudge is number 1 to me, so that's why I put him. So that's my team. So my recap: Alomar leading off at second, Griffey batting second at center field, Frank Thomas batting third at first base, Barry Bonds in left field batting fourth, batting fifth at right field, Juan Gonzalez, batting sixth at DH, Mike Piazza, batting seventh at third base, Chipper Jones, batting eighth playing shortstop, Barry Larkin, and then rounding it out at the 9th position at catcher, my man Pudge Rodriguez. And starting the game would probably be Randy Johnson, because that's my ace. And, you know, that's what it boils down to. So feel free to comment down below who you have chosen for the 90s. Let me know. Take care. Be blessed. Peace.